Alright, so imagine an anime series that once was called one of the best anime of its genre, creating a loyal fan base and gaining some of the best reviews an anime could get. Now, picture that exact same anime becoming so hated, so disliked to the point that it's fallen to the bottom of the barrel, now being called one of the most bland and unwatchable series to date. But you might be wondering, how is it possible for an anime to drop the ball this much? It can't possibly be this bad. You're definitely over-exaggerating for views, aren't you? Wait, first things first. I got 12 views on my latest video. How many extra views am I supposed to exaggerate for? 5? But my garbage view count aside, I actually have an answer to that earlier question. Basically, the anime that I'm talking about has 2 seasons as of writing this. The first season is perfect in almost every way. However, the second season didn't really follow the first season's perfect formula and decided, hey, let's change this one teeny tiny detail. People won't care, right? Oh boy, did people care about it. This one teeny tiny detail that was changed in the second season brought the biggest amount of controversy and hate to not just the anime, but to the studio that was animating it. Now, what is this detail, you might ask? If I told you it right now, you would probably think, oh, that's not too big of a deal, or something like that. But I promise you, this detail toppled one of the foundational cards in a card house that brought the entire series crashing down. And to understand the significance of this detail, I firstly have to give you some context on why it's actually important. And for that, we need to go back in time to approximately 10 years ago. All the way back in 2013, the anime scene was fairly small compared to the massive amount of popularity it is at now. During this anime variety drought where massive shonens dominated the scene, a small short anime called The Devil is a Part-Timer started to air. It was an Isekai, but not one you'd normally expect from this genre. You know how in like every single Isekai they use the same boring tropes? A main character who was literally a disco god gets run over by Truck-kun and gets reincarnated into another world with the most stupidly broken power of all time. In The Devil is a Part-Timer, unlike the hundreds of other Isekai, it starts off in the fantasy world rather than the real world. There's a ridiculously overpowered Devil King that's taken over the world, but a legendary hero capable of defeating the Devil King arrives at this massive castle. So the Devil King, probably because he's weak as shit, creates a portal and escapes to another world. Basically, his plan was that if he went to another world, he could take it over without having a legendary hero join them. Genius plan, right? And so he does, and he makes a portal to none other than boring old Earth. I guess Earth is doomed now, right? I mean, how can tanks stop an all-powerful demon king? Is everyone on Earth going to die now? Without a legendary hero, who's gonna stop him? Capitalism. Capitalism defeats the Devil King. Basically, the Devil King lost all of his power since magic doesn't really exist in our world. So he's like, well shit, now what? So he turns to the place that is the perfect way to start his journey to take over the world. And also maybe be able to eat and survive. The place any broke teenager with false dreams of reaching their goals but probably never will because they're $5,000 in debt turn to. McDonald's. He works minimum wage at a McDonald's. You're poor. That's basically just the main drawing point of this anime. What would happen if someone that was so obsessed with power and hell-bent on enslaving the entire world gets transported to the modern world, stripped of his magic and power that basically defined his entire existence in the first place? Now left with nothing but his frail body to work with, how can he try to survive? Satan, or Mao-sama, the Devil King who only thinks about murder and destruction, now only thinks about survival in this new hostile world, doing anything to get by. Just like we all are. It's not just the Devil King either. His second in command, a ruthless war commander that helped the Devil King enslave the world, is now reduced to a housemaid doing chores around their shabby old apartment. Rather than manage his dozens upon dozens of demon soldiers, he now manages the small budget that the Devil King earns so that they don't starve to death. Oh, also, the legendary hero who's trained their entire life to defeat the Devil King also followed the two through the portal. But now she's an exhausted accountant working to barely survive without much care for what she came here for in the first place. The Devil King who's gonna murder everyone and take over the world? Not much of a priority. But taxes. Now that's a beast even a sword can't solve. But evading it can, if you know what I mean. It's an anime that doesn't lean too much into the action side of most isekai anime, and mainly bases the entertainment factor of it on the sheer ridiculousness of the situation the characters are in. Even now, there's not that many good parody isekai that leans more on the comedy side than the fantasy or action side. Konosuba is still definitely the king of this comedy genre, but The Devil is a Part-Time is a solid contender for that throne. Well, at least the first season was. The Devil is a Part-Timer, also known as Hataraku Mao-sama, was a decently popular light novel written by Satoshi Wagahara. The light novel was actually popular enough to get an anime adaptation. When this anime did air, it was met with a fairly small amount of popularity. Isekais weren't as popular or abundant as they are now, with the sheer volume of new isekais releasing in just this season. It's insane compared to 10 years ago. I mean, people were watching Sword Art Online back then. The landscape for isekai anime was barren at most. Despite everything, it gained some fairly positive reviews on MAL when it started airing. The main thing people said was that it was fun, quick, and entertaining. Back then, it was the era with anime with 50, 100, or even 300 episodes being the only thing to watch, and so something quick and funny like The Devil's a Part-Timer was perfect to avoid that dreaded anime burnout. Even though it only had one season, it wasn't a hyped shonen like Jujutsu Kaisen or One Punch Man, so it didn't gain a cult following or a massive fandom to keep it alive. Even though it never really took off as an anime, it had a good plot that's funny and well written, characters with great dynamics, and that are somehow relatable despite them being demon lords or whatever. It also has great animation for something made over 10 years ago. White Fox Studio, the producers of this first season, essentially used this short anime to boost their animation quality. They tried to see what was gonna succeed and what wouldn't, and using this, they go on to make Re:Zero, regarded as one of the best isekai anime of all time, which would go on to make them more money than Devil's a Part-Timer ever could. Like, do you see how many damn Rem figures there are? And why does one have a f***ing sniper? But guns aside, there was never really any figures, spin-offs, or whatever that really came out of this anime after it aired. It was forgotten, left to gather dust into the pile of anime that would never get a season 2. Lost to time until eventually, someone picked it back out. I got the trailer for the second season recommended to me around early 2022, so I clicked it, and was met with very mixed expressions, plus a hell of a lot of confusion. In the trailer, there was one small issue that I've been talking about this entire time: the art style. In the previous season, the art style looked like just your average anime. It wasn't anything too insane, but as they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But in the new season, well, they made the eyes bigger. That was the main problem I had. And it wasn't just me either, most people said the same thing, but it's not too big of a deal, right? That's what I thought too, it's something really minor anyways. It hasn't gotten a sequel in over 10 years, so obviously some things have changed during that time period. The comedy and the interactions between all the characters was what I really enjoyed back in the first season, no matter how they looked. When the season of summer 2022 finally rolled around, I started watching the second season. After watching through the entirety of the second season, I can safely say that it's not even close to being compared with its predecessor. Firstly, the art style that I've been talking about the entire time does not do the anime justice. The characters are the main drawing point of this anime, like I've said previously. It was the main reason why season 1 succeeded as much as it did. But this change in art style in the second season makes the characters look a lot blander. You know those goofy rip-off versions of TV shows? Yeah, you can't tell me that the one on the right is not a rip-off of the one on the left. Because of this counterfeit effect, which is just a term I made up, it makes the whole show feel like a poorly made copy of the original. This counterfeit effect continued to build up with the actual story of the second season. The story is a lot less interesting than the first season because the lack of a main goal or point, a point that the plot tries to move forward towards. In the first season, the end goal was the Devil King trying to take over the world. But in this season, the goal disappears for some reason. If you have an anime with no real goals that the characters try to work towards, what are they actually meant to do? They just kind of wander around and go into random subplots. But they're a lot worse because these subplots don't actually lead to anything other than being a waste of time. And if you have characters with no goal that's doing nothing to progress the plot forward, are they really that interesting to follow? Of course not. The characters are still funny and entertaining with their own little quirks that I've mentioned before, but that strength isn't enough because there's almost no development between them, even given this new season's main arc. Basically, this entire season revolves around this godchild, Alice Ramos, and she thinks that the two main characters are her parents. Now, this is actually a great idea to further the connection between the two characters who essentially hate each other's guts, because now they have to work together despite their differences. But rather than that, she's used as a device to have these really awkward and cringy scenes between them rather than actual romance, or even just regular development. This plays more into the counterfeit effect because it just seems like the second season has the original characters copied, but since a ripoff doesn't know how the original works, they just do basic uninteresting things because they don't know how to develop the characters properly. I mean, it's easy to copy KFC's logo, designs, and menu, but since you don't have the recipe, all you can make is just regular plain chicken. And just like that, it feels like the second season is just a regular plain version of the original. All of this stemming from the change in art style that I've mentioned before. I'm not saying that this season is trash by any means. If you like it, good for you. I mean, I like Rent a Girlfriend, unironically, so we all have pretty shit takes. I do highly recommend watching the first season if you haven't already, and if I still haven't convinced you not to do so, you can go watch the second season as well. It just truly intrigued me that one simple change in just the art style could bring down the rest of the aspects that go into making an anime. Most anime are ruined by the story, but this one was special. It just goes to show how important the look of an anime is, which is overlooked a lot sometimes.